is Todd Novak, and I work at Washington High School. I'm the Freshman Academy Coordinator. And this year we did a one-year study on how to change habits. We started with working with staff. I worked with the Freshman Academy teams and kind of culled out some principles on how to change habits. And then I launched in January a study of working with freshmen to see if I could encourage them to review their day. What we were looking at was kids, we tell kids to study, but they really don't, I'm not sure that they're doing that. And so the most basic element of studying is sitting down and saying, what did I do today? So using Google Docs, I created a form that students were to do and to fill out each day. What I learned from this study was that we need to be more intentional about providing structures to encourage them to do the daily study. They really didn't do the daily study. I met with them every 2 weeks, but they were not maybe as diligent as they needed to be. The results of the study were inconclusive, but the ramifications of the study is we're going to look at continuing to expand that and look at how we can look at the daily review. A couple of the kids that did the daily reviews that I worked with and interviewed said it was very beneficial to kind of going over their day, to remembering homework and doing those types of things. The 20 kids that were a part of the study were kids that were selected by teams that knew each other. Kids that weren't straight A students and didn't have more than one F. They were just kind of right down the middle. And so we wanted to put together something for this group that's doing just fine to see if we could find a way to improve their skills with just some very simple study practices. I'm encouraged by that, and we look forward to continuing the research this year.
My original research question was, how do we improve note-taking and studying skills in project-based learning classrooms? It stemmed from a survey of alumni in which they said some of the skills that they were lacking were note-taking and test-taking during their lecture classes. Some of the stuff that I found was that project-based learning students tend to self-report higher competency in life skills like creativity, and the ability to find information instead of academic skills like note-taking and test-taking. But study skills like note-taking and test-taking do have a significant effect on student learning, according to Hattie's research. So one resource that kept popping up was the LASSI, or Learning and Study Strategies Inventory. And this is 10 different study skills that can be measured in students. It actually has a positive correlation with their academic success. So what I developed was a project-based learning module that has project-based learning teachers look at those 10 different skills and try to brainstorm how they can use them in project-based learning classrooms. I hope to use this research at New Tech in implementing some PD with my leadership team. And I hope that by fostering study skills, we can improve students' academic performance in post-secondary institutions without getting rid of the engaging aspect of project-based learning.
I'm Michelle DeYoung. I teach Algebra 2 at Washington High School. I worked with Carrie Papke, Cindy Jones, and Katie Kopp on researching whether we are truly covering all of the Common Core standards as we intend. And we went through together systematically to figure out, are there any gaps in our teaching of the standards? The process we went through is each team member, there was one from Algebra 1, Geometry, Algebra 2, Pre-Calc, went through the entire standards list for our course, and then went through our actual lesson plan books to match up how many days we were actually spending on each standard. So we matched up our instruction with the standards for the entire year. We then sat down and compared the charts and did an all 4-year analysis for Washington High School to see how much we are overlapping vertically, or if there are any areas that we did not cover anything at all. And if so, we then analyzed why that would be and why we're overlapping, and is it justified, and are the skipped standards being covered elsewhere, say in AP Stats. So we went through systematically, step by step, and analyzed what we saw on our all 4 years chart. Our plan then is to come back the beginning of the school year during some in-service time and communicate with each group some of the things that we saw in our analysis. So we put together a chart, just these are some of the things we need to communicate with our respective collaborative teams when we get back to school in the fall.
My name's Barb Newitt. I teach AP Physics 1 and AP Physics 2 at Roosevelt High School. My project was entitled Using GeoGebra Software to Create Physics Simulations. A short version of the project is that in physics, one of our greatest battles is finding a good way for our students to visualize the tougher concepts. And we have had a number of pieces of software that allow them to do that through different simulations, but most of those require laptop computers. And since we now have the Chromebooks for the students, what I wanted to do is find a set that we could use for simulations that are Chromebook compatible. That allowed the students to be able to access those simulations outside of the school day. This is what the GeoGebra software looks like. As you can see on my laptop computer, I'm able to create the simulation. So this right here is a simulation that's currently in progress. In this particular case, I'm creating an object that's going to roll down a ramp. There's a couple of graphs that are going to go through it. And then there's a secondary part of it where you can do all of the programming. So over on the left there is where we actually program in what's going to happen. We have all the points that are there, the different lines, the different equations, and then here is where you actually set it into motion. Now the great part about it then is that once I have that done and I upload that online, then the students are able to access that on the Chromebook. So over here is what the finished product looks like to them. And so they can get to that software if they have available. They can certainly do this on a computer or a laptop of any type, but they can also do that on their Chromebooks. And so that allows them then when they are at home with their one-to-one Chromebooks to be able to use that. This is huge for our students as they try to visualize some of the trickier concepts. In this particular case, as I change the angle, we'll see that our graph changes. We see this little vector diagram, which is the funny looking triangle, that changes along with it. And then I can set it into motion and see how that affects the motion of the object as it goes downwards. What I found with this program is that it definitely was a huge help to our students. We were able to incorporate them into one unit at the end of the year already this school year, and it was so nice for them to have access to those at home. I even found myself writing some homework problems tailored specifically towards the simulations. So what I would see as far as the next steps are to continue creating more simulations. The ones that I made as part of this project, of which there are currently 9, those are online. They're available to any physics teacher that wants to use them. But in the future, I would see us expanding into additional topics. I found it was taking about 3 to 4 hours to create each one. So I feel that 9 simulations is certainly a good start, but there's room to create lots more as we go through the future school years.
My name is Tony Martinet. I teach speech and debate and composition at Lincoln High School. For my research project, I kind of wanted to do a synthesis of a lot of the literature that's already been produced to better understand teacher development, how we can help teachers develop, as well as what are some of the key things that they need to focus on in their development of their profession and their career. There was 3 main findings that sort of synthesized out of a lot of the literature. The biggest thing is that teachers need to be considering themselves learners as well. It's important that they're learners they need to learn about the process of teaching. As some of the literature points out, there's not enough time in teacher ed programs to give them everything they need, and so they really need to be lifelong learners of the profession. What they need to also learn about is the content they teach as well. Too many teachers rely on how they learned the content as a way of model of teaching it instead of learning new and different ways to engage different students, which finally leads to the fact that they need to be learners about the context in which they teach. The school they teach, the students they teach, and the community within they teach. By being continual learners of the profession and of teaching, it just helps them to continue to grow and change. Not to mention they get to model the lifelong learning they expect of their students. In order to actually help these teachers develop, and the reason they need to learn so much is because every day they have to be able to make professional judgments, and those professional judgments affect everything that happens in their classroom. So what can be done to help them is to first and foremost establish a purpose for them. A purpose of education, a purpose of their classroom, and a purpose of the specific activities in what they do in the classroom. A lot of the literature is starting to have a broader discussion about this purpose of education. Are we here to give them, are the students just basic skills? Are we trying to help them socialize? Are we trying to help them learn to be individuals themselves? One of the best things that can be done with teachers directly is to help them become reflective practitioners, giving them opportunities to actually reflect on what they do in the classroom at an activity levels. They need to have conversations with their peers and their administration. In the long run, my hope with this research and what I hope to do with it is, one, is to have constant conversations with my own peers and within my own department. I also know that personally, whenever I have my conversations with my administrators, to try to make sure the conversation focuses on long-term goals for my improvement as opposed to specific techniques that should be getting applied in my classroom. A long-term goal with the research is I want to keep working with the information to distill it down a little bit more, because I think it would be a really great workshop to do with teachers on how to take their own evaluations and how to take their own observations in their classroom and use those as a way to grow and to reflect, as instead of merely a rubber stamp on, okay, I'm doing what's good, let me just keep going. I think it would also be really beneficial, because as the literature also says, is having these conversations with teachers about new techniques and new methods is important, because a lot of teachers shy away from new methodologies because they appear inefficient simply because the teachers are unfamiliar with them. So it would be important to have conversations with individuals as they design professional development training on ways that they can provide more opportunities and more information to make it more applicable for teachers, instead of just we had a great feel-good conversation, now let's forget about it for the rest of the year.
My name is Erica Bell. I teach 8th grade social studies at Edison Middle School, and my project this summer was to research peer tutoring. Next year I'm going to be part of the honors curriculum, where I'll be having students who are 8th graders tutoring either 7th or 6th graders. That's still open yet, depending on the schedule and enrollment. But I really wanted to look at, how do you set up an environment where you can maximize that learning potential? What sort of culture do you have to create in terms of students working with other students? And what sort of activities do I need to foster to guide that process along? And I have to tell you, I was really, really excited about the research, because it was just a great review for everything that the district believes in terms of teaching and how learning occurs. One thing that really stood out to me is that for peer tutoring to work, it has to have the right culture where every person feels valued. If the person who's getting tutored feels belittled, obviously they're not going to be open to it. So the first thing that I have to get the tutors to understand is that they are a friend first and a tutor second. Thank you so much for giving me the opportunity to learn about peer tutoring. I will be starting the program next year, and I'm excited to see the results. So thank you so much.